Let's see if this soldier is truly ready to perform its duty. Find out what's going on as I hereby invite everyone to join me on my adventures through Marvel Snap. Hey everybody, it's Annabelle. So, it is time for the Symbiote Season Pass card. Since the Season Pass cards don't get their own Spotlight Cash the first Thursday of every new season, I like to do a little episode on what their story is. And this time we have Agent Venom. Agent Venom is the symbiote that was bound with Flash Thompson, who was a classmate of Peter Parker and lived only a few blocks from the Parker house. He was physically abused by his alcoholic father, who was a police officer, and this led him to having his own violent, bullying nature. He initially was the tormentor of Peter, whose secret alter ego of Spider-Man also happened to be his idol. But by the time he left for college and joined the army, he and Peter had parted as friends. Agent Venom joined the army, and during his tours of duty, he returned to the battlefield many times and lost his legs after saving his partner from enemy forces. His sacrifice was enough to earn him a recommendation for the Medal of Honor. He went through the so-called stages of grief backwards, even going so far as to look for dangerous experimental procedures to regain his legs, and was enlisted as part of Project Reborn. Agent Venom was the symbiote that was recently acquired by the U.S. government. While bonded to this host, the host was able to change his body to reproduce his legs, allowing him to walk again, with the added upside of having powers comparable to Spider-Man. However, he wanted to use this power for others to fulfill his aspirations of being a superhero, and this would often clash with his military orders, so he eventually left the military to break out on his own. Agent Venom was chronically abused by his violent alcoholic father and was a bully during his high school years, but got inspired by Spider-Man to become a selfless hero and eventually straightened himself out, and joined the military in order to prove that he was a hero. But when he did join the military, he was still haunted by his past, and to this day he remains hot-tempered, always fighting with the predatory urges of the symbiote, which he tries to keep suppressed, but those tendencies will often resurface if he becomes too angry. Agent Venom has all the abilities of Spider-Man, including enhanced strength, speed, wall crawling, and unlike the original Spider-Man, he can generate his own webbings from his wrist. He can also generate tentacles from his suit to hold multiple weapons such as machine guns, and is able to use them to shape into sharp objects or projectiles. He can also use the suit in order to create camouflages and disguises for himself. This made him an ideal operative to be doing secret agent work for the government. Agent Venom is the symbiote that was bound to a former bully who lost their legs after saving his partner from enemy forces, and was able to change his body, and now wants to use this power for others. This is represented in Marvel Snap, as when this symbiote shows up, it'll change the bodies of your remaining teammates to have the original power of Agent Venom. So in Marvel Snap, what this card does is it is a 2-cost 4 power that gets every single card that is still in your deck when it shows up on reveal. The 4 power that the original symbiote Spider-Man would have. Even if you bought this, it doesn't give any extra power, it just gives that solid 4. Generally speaking, this is a generally good card, which makes it a 3-star. Let's talk about why I ended up at 3-star as we go over this card just a little bit. So when you're looking at this card and you're going just out and about, if you're just to look at it, it's not that bad of a card. And that's why you're like, well, why did you give it a 3? Well, here's the thing. It's not a card you throw in every single deck. There's absolutely no reason to throw this card in an Infinite deck. If you're trying to play an Infinite deck, this card makes no sense. The closest card I can come up to it that you would ever see in life would be a Bast. Where Bast works in your hand while the Agent Venom works in your deck. So the other card that it basically comes close to is Okoye, and that's kind of the problem. The reason that nobody really plays Okoye, even though technically speaking, Okoye is a decently good card, it's almost half of what the Agent Venom is just by default. It has no downside. If they gave Okoye one more power, it'd be half of the Agent Venom and have no downside. But nobody plays Okoye because if you legitimately don't draw it on 2, you're kind of having issues. But it's a really good card because if you look at a lot of the 2-drops, let's go through some of the 1-drops that make sense. It makes perfect sense for the hood. Like, the hood is where you want this to be, but even if you don't get the hood, stuff like Deadpool is really awesome with this. There are very few cards in the 1 slot that have a power higher than 4. Even when you start moving into 2, and you're looking at stuff like Thena. Thena's great with this card because Thena's going to start at the 4. But even other cards that fall into the 2 slot, there are very few, if you really go through them, that end up having more than 4 power to start with. They can get above 4 power, but they don't have it to start with. Now, if you're just looking at a power stat point, it is the Cloak. It's a Cloak that's not moving anything. It's a 2-force that's not doing a lot on your board, but that's a solidly good line for 2. But that's not what you're hoping to use this for. You're hoping to use this on stuff like the Brood. Imagine getting a Brood and having to get that 4 power in here. Even on the Agent Coulson, it's not a downgrade on an Agent Coulson, and that's a 3-drop card, and this is not a bad 3-drop card for its power. That's the thing, even going all the way up to cost 3 cards, 4 power is hard to beat even on 3 cost cards. Now, I don't think this card needs to be in big decks. I think if you're trying to run it with stuff like Iron Man, even though it technically works with Iron Man, making Iron Man a 4/8 by itself, if you throw this into an Iron Man deck and you are using the Agent Venom as your whole plan behind the Iron Man deck, to have that 5/8 show up out of somewhere, you're going to be sad on the decks that you don't draw it. Again, the decks that you want are the small guys, the little guys, the Deadpools, the Human Torches, the stuff like that. Same thing with Artem Zola, Artem Zola is normally a 0-cost card. That's its downside. Artem Zola starting out as a 4 is something that can win you a location that somebody wasn't expecting on. But again, you can't throw that many big cards in this particular deck. You want your deck to win without getting the Symbiote Spider-Man, without getting the Agent Venom, without getting any of the cards that you need in that deck. You don't want to rely on this card showing up right on 2, because if that's what you're relying on, if you're truly saying, hey, I've got to draw this card on 2, you're going to be sad, because if you want to test it out, legitimately, if you just want to test it out, put Okoye in your deck for a while. Go play a few games in Conquest, use Okoye. Okoye is generally, I think everybody gets Okoye. I think she's Series 2, let me just double check real quick. Series 2, yeah, so everybody has Okoye. Go put Okoye in the deck that you want to put Agent Venom in. See how often you play the Okoye. See how often you get the Okoye. Go in Conquest and try it out for a while. If you're not happy with how your deck is running with Okoye, it's not going to get too much better running with the Agent Venom. With that being said, some of the big cards don't really matter. Even Dr. Doom. If this is the Dr. Doom, you're not crying. Dr. Doom's losing 1 point off of this. So you don't have to put every single card as an itty bitty teeny tiny card in your deck. You can put bigger stuff in there, just watch what you're using for power. Again, this is a decently good card, but if you want to test out decks before you're willing to buy this, if you don't buy the Season Pass card just straight off the bat, because it's the Season Pass card and probably the best $10 you'll ever spend in the game per month, then try and play it for a while. Take whatever deck you would use the Agent Venom in, put a play in that same spot, try it 2-3 times, see how it feels. If it feels good and you're just like, hey, it needs a couple more points of power, then Agent Venom will be perfectly fine in there. But if you're sitting there going, this deck's not working, it has nothing to do with it just has to do with me not getting the Okoye constantly. I keep feeling if I don't draw the Okoye, then the Agent Venom's not going to help you out. So use it as a barometer if you're not willing to get the card straight off the bat. Try it out, test it out. Anyways, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and as always, remember, play for fun.